Hello again. For those of you who are back for yet another interview, thank you for joining us. At the 1:30 hour, we've got Kirstin Cornnell from the Pennsylvania Prison Society. She is PPS's Family and Community Support Director. Kirstin, thank you very much for being here, first off.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So on election day, we're excited to have you all come talk really about the voting rights of those who are detained or incarcerated, either themselves or their family, and to kind of hear about what rights they have in our environment. But first, I'd just love to ask you to give the audience a quick overview of what the Pennsylvania Prison Society is and what you all do.
Sure. So the Pennsylvania Prison Society is actually the oldest human rights organization in the country. We were founded in 1787 um, really, it's old. There's a plaque to my left that has Benjamin Franklin's name on it. He was part of our beginning. But we were really founded based on the premise that when you remove a population from public view, that's a population that's really ripe for abuse and neglect, and that it's important to have independent civilian oversight of that. So we're actually written into Pennsylvania law, and we have access to anybody in state or county custody in Pennsylvania. And this is unique to Pennsylvania. There are two other states that have organizations with similar access, and those are Illinois and New York.
Well, that is really neat about being there. I knew you all had been around for a while. I didn't know that it was the oldest human rights organization in the country. That's
Yeah.
so on election day. Can you give us kind of a quick primer on like what are the laws and regulations that govern voting rights for those who are incarcerated and who are detained?
Yeah, so it varies state by state. And Pennsylvania is one of 22 states that allows anybody that is not currently serving a felony conviction to vote. So what that means is as soon as you are released, your voting rights are restored. And if you are serving either a misdemeanor conviction or if you're awaiting trial, you still have your voter eligibility.
Mhm. So you said we're one of 22 that has that designation. So are there some states that are more, what's the word, draconian? Pick your adjective, I guess.
Yeah. So it's a scale. So Maine and Vermont are the only two states that allow people actively serving felony convictions to vote. So, that would be the the greatest access to voting rights. And then there are other states that swing the other way that either have lifetime bans to voting or restrictions for completing your felony, your probation, your parole. The thing that really gums people up is having to pay off all fines, fees, and restitution. Florida is the state that disenfranchises the most people by number. More than 1 million people are disenfranchised in the state of Florida, and that's primarily because of that fines and fees piece. And I think some of the other states that have, the more restrictive ones are, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, those states.
And I realize we're talking about Pennsylvania politics and
Yeah.
not the states, but I'd be curious, like there was a ballot measure passed in Florida a few years ago that ostensibly allowed for greater rights, but your point about the fines and fees has created a
Yeah. So what was passed in 2018 there actually didn't include the fines and fees piece. It would have restored voting rights to most people. And then they passed another measure in 2019 that rolled back the 2018 measure and included that you had to have that fines and fees piece. And I know there was a lot of national media following that case. And, there was an individual that was arrested for registering to vote, thinking that they had had their voting rights restored. So a lot of confusion was created. And I think it turns a lot of people off that, they see that case, they hear of somebody who was formerly incarcerated getting arrested for trying to vote. And that has ripple effects across the country, that it kind of creates this like de facto disenfranchisement. So, even when I'm walking around Philadelphia, I'm in the county jails all over the state, a lot of people don't know
Mhm.
that we don't have the same laws as Florida, that it varies state by state. So it's really important to get the word out that as soon as you go home, your voting rights are restored and you can take part in the process.
Mm. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the work that the Prison Society does to help outreach and to inform those individuals?
Yeah, so there was a 2020 study that our partner organization, All Voting is Local, conducted, and they found that out of approximately 25,000 eligible voters in county jails, only 50 people requested ballots. So we realized that even though people have the right to vote in county custody, most people aren't taking advantage of the process. So a coalition of folks have gotten together to really see what we can do to get the word out, look at the processes that each county jail has in place to make sure that people understand that they have the right to vote and how they can do it while they're incarcerated. So we've been working with county commissioners across the state as well as legislators to really think about how we standardize that process. There's more than 60 county jails in the state of Pennsylvania, and they all operate differently. And there's no uniform mandate for how they give the information to folks that they can vote. There's no uniform process for requesting a ballot. There was actually a bill introduced a few weeks back to mandate a uniformity to that process and making sure each county jail actually designates a staff person that is responsible for distributing registration materials, distributing requests for ballots, and making sure that people have the assistance they need to fill them out. Because it's also confusing. I feel like we're seeing stories in the media of people, that mess up their absentee ballots or their mail-in ballot applications. And there's, the additional ripples when you're in prison, what address do I use? Do I have a permanent address? Do I send a ballot here? What if I go home before the election? And then, just in general literacy issues as well.
Right, right, absolutely. Switching gears just a little bit, I do in my portfolio do a lot of work with young people, and a lot of young people, when you ask them what issues matter to you, criminal justice reform is kind of at the top of the list for a lot of
Yeah.
people. So how does this voting rights for detainees how does that topic kind of filter in towards broader criminal justice reform?
Yeah, I think, in general, the criminal justice system has failed a lot of people. And I think, getting people involved in the civic process and really teaching what the different levers are and how elections determine who holds power over those levers. So I think when we're talking to incarcerated people, really educating, like, we're electing judges. We're electing prosecutors. You're electing, the mayor is responsible for, appointing who's the commissioner of the prisons, that there are all these different pieces that are elected that people don't think about, especially on the hyper local level, that really impact the decisions. And I think that really, when you start talking about electing judges, is usually what gets people really excited about the process, because that's something that has a direct impact on who's in our jails.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Hmm. Talk a little bit about kind of public opinion. And so as we just talked 10 minutes ago about ballot initiatives passed in other states that either grant or restrict access to the franchise. And so how are you able to make any observations about how public opinion has kind of shaped the laws and policies around the voting rights for those experiencing detainment or incarceration?
Yeah, I think we've seen a shift in restoring voting rights over the years. I think more people recognizing that voting really is a right. It's not a privilege and it's not something that should be able to be revoked. I think there has been the Sentencing Project does a ton of really great research on this if you're interested in the kind of national landscape of felony disenfranchisement. But they did a study that uh, disenfranchisement has declined 24% since 2016, and that's based on states kind of rolling back these restrictions. I think it was, if we look to our neighbor to the south, Delaware, in 2016, they used to have a restriction that you had to be home for 5 years before you could vote again, and they rolled that back. So we're seeing it move that direction. And I think the most recent poll I saw that more than half of the population believes that people even serving felony convictions should still have the right to vote.
Nice, nice. So in your all's work in the either Philadelphia City Jail or in counties around the state, have you all seen an uptick in interest and in participation, or are you still kind of fighting through a lot of the
I think that there's a lot more that needs to happen, and a lot of it is just battling the disinformation that's out there. You know, so many people don't know that they have the right to vote. They actually just passed a measure that they're going to start when somebody has a guilty plea, that they'll be adding to the process there, that you're going to be informed that you have the right to vote, you know, upon returning home, and just having more points of contact that you're getting people information. But some of it is really battling the distrust in prisons as well. And so how people vote in prisons, we have some facilities where staff are really cooperative and really great and do everything they can to get information to folks. And then there are other facilities, that just post a flyer, and it's really on the onus of the incarcerated person to figure out the process, and getting information in and out of jails is notoriously difficult. So I think there's still a lot to be done on the education front, and then on the process front in prisons as well, or prisons and jails, to make sure that people understand what they need to do and can do it.
Yeah.
There's another issue that we've been kind of tackling, as more and more prisons are using technology and digitizing things like scanning of mail. I think more than 20 county jails now are scanning all mail that comes into facilities. And then people just get the digital version. There was a recent issue at the Lackawanna County Jail where mail and ballots were getting caught up in that. So people's ballots were getting scanned, which then therefore is no longer a ballot. You can't submit a printout of a scan. So we've had to work on mail policies on how mail is designated, and making sure that it goes through the same process as all legal mail, to make sure that people get the ballots when they're actually sent. So lots of little ripples.
All small little touch points that if it doesn't go exactly the way that you
Yeah.
that you do it can create a disenfranchisement.
Yeah.
What have I not asked about that's important for the viewing public to think about related to those who are incarcerated or detained?
I guess, one thing I would add, too, when you think about why this is important, right? I think probably most people that are tuning in are folks that really believe in civic engagement and the power of this. But a lot of research points to when people have voting rights restored, they recidivate and get rearrested at a lower rate. And that's tied to the fact that voting and participating in your community is, it's a pro-social thing. You feel part of something. There's a real impact when you continue to tell people that, you don't belong, like, if you can't vote, you are not part of this community. We don't care about what you have to say. And that has lots of different implications. So, restoring the right to vote is also a public safety measure, and the fact that it really, ropes people back into their community and the processes around them.
Absolutely. Interesting. Well, this is a really interesting conversation. I think it's something that will, as we elect new mayor and new council in Philadelphia, there'll be a lot of hopefully continued conversations with this. And we appreciate the work that you all do going in to make sure that these individuals who do have the right to vote are actually aware of all the hopefully some supports that are either in place or will be coming.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us, and yeah, really excited to hear about what you all are continuing to do.
Cool. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Kirstin. Kirstin. All right, take it easy.